Hello guys and welcome to the official Guatemala Survivor rankings, and today we are counting down all of the players from best to worst. I say from best to worst. We're going to be ranking them in this here, and I have to say I'm super excited. I have been holding off on this for a while just because I've been busy, but now is the perfect time to do it as we are heading deep into Panama/Exile Island. So without much further ado, we're going to jump straight in. There's been a couple of minor changes to the format. Instead of having would vote you off, it was just a little bit wordy. Snuff immediately. You know me, I call it the snuffing when the torch gets snuffed out. So therefore, snuff immediately. Someone that I want gone. Immediately out of the game. Please leave. So up first we have poor old Jim. And we have poor old Morgan. And we have Briana. And we have... I don't remember her name. Hang on. I do have it up literally next to me. So just give me 2 seconds. It's Brooke. All 4 of them are going to go in Gone But Forgotten because I actually physically cannot remember anything about them. I remember that Morgan was a magician's apprentice, I think. The other 2... couldn't tell you anything. And I'm not even being funny. Brooke was in like 4 episodes. Again, literally could not tell you a single thing. How am I getting all the way to episode 4 and I don't know anything about you until the episode when you get kicked off and you go home? I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not sure. But these 4 are the picks for Gone But Forgotten. I have to say, I just didn't rate them enough to put them any higher because they just weren't there long enough. And they were only the main characters for a fraction of an episode when they were like, oh, who are we getting rid of? This person. Oh no, please don't get rid of me. Yeah, it was a little bit like that. Anyway, we're moving on to Blake. Blake, I probably would have snuffed him immediately, I can't lie. The way he was going round, just being like, oh yeah, here's all the information on my sex life. I was like, excuse me, what? I don't know about this. You also had just a little bit too big of a head for me. It was just a bit too much at times, I can't lie. It was a bit over the top. The fact that he was absolutely crippled on the first 3 days, in the first like 2 episodes, I think. And then after that, he was like, yeah, I'm the strongest person here. I was like, bestie, we saw you on the floor collapsed. If that screams strongest player, I got something to tell you, I can't lie. And unfortunately, he became a victim of his own team. When they crossed over, his team lost, and they managed to persuade them to get rid of him. So, you know what? Fair game. You try sometimes, you lose some other times. So, congratulations, but it is what it is at the end of the day. Up next, we have Margaret. Margaret... I would probably want Margaret in my alliance. I can't lie, Margaret came in so unbelievably clutch. The first like 2 days on the Nakum team, was it the Nakum or was it the Yashar team? I think it was the Nakum team. They were struggling, absolutely struggling out there. And Margaret was the only person, there were other people as well, don't get me wrong, but was the main person who was making sure that everyone was okay. She's a nurse in her actual life, and she made sure that everybody was fine. I have to give her credit where credit's due. Even when Judd was rinsing her out in Tribal Council, she still clapped back with funny lines, and she took her exit really, really well. I wish we could have gotten to see more from her. I feel like she became a target of the group mentality of, oh, we got to stick with our teams. We can't possibly stray without our teams. But it is what it is at the end of the day. I'm sad that she got voted off, but what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do at the end of the day? Up next, we have Brian. I also would put Brian in my alliance. I am shocked that Brian has not made a reappearance on Survivor. I'm shocked, if I'm being honest, that a lot of people on this series have not made a reappearance. There are so many people and so many great characters on this series that I feel like everyone talks really negatively about this series for no reason whatsoever. The cast is fun, there's great twists, it's the introduction of the immunity idol. Like, I feel like there's such great content in here, but because it's not the most memorable season, it gets left out and people tend to diss it because it's not as interesting as other seasons. But as someone who hasn't seen other seasons, I was very entertained, thank you very much. And Brian was one of the reasons why the early game was actually so interesting. His confessionals were entertaining, he was fun to watch play, the competitions he competed in were good, and I thought he was going to go far. And then, randomly, they just sliced his ankles and sent him packing. I was like, what's going on here? Huh? What are we doing here? It was a real shame, but you know what? Moving on, we have Amy. I loved Amy. Amy was hysterical. There's very, very rare times when you go on one of these shows and you have a personality like Amy that is genuinely funny without even trying it. When she was talking with Gary in the woods and she was like, if I find out you're lying, I'm gonna whoop your ass. I know where to find you. I'm a police officer. I can find your home. Okay, I will find it. That was such a funny moment. The fact that she twisted or done her ankle in twice and she still was fighting to stay in the game, I have to give her props, because oh my goodness, she should have been out like first day. First day she should have been gone, and as soon as she done her ankle in, they should have sent her back in. But the fact that she was like, nah, I'm gonna keep going, I'm gonna play it down, I'm gonna do my best, I can't take that away from her. I cannot and will not take that away from her. And I have to say, Amy, you slayed that so well. You did so unbelievably well. And I'm gutted that you didn't make it to merge. You were a victim of tribal numbers. And unfortunately, that's the game at the end of the day. That is the game. Up next, we have Brandon. I didn't really feel anything with Brandon. I think Brandon was one of those people that narrowly missed out on the merge and narrowly missed out on any kind of edit. Like, I don't feel like I got to know him other than he's a farm boy. And that was about it. That was the extent of my knowledge for him. I think it's a shame because I feel like it just didn't translate onto screen how good or bad his game was. So I don't really know where to rank him. Because at that point, that team, I was like, oh yeah, this team is going to get absolutely mutilated. You've got Gary, who's already a minority on a minority team. And then you've got Danny, who somehow miraculously managed to win the game. But we'll talk about that in a bit. Then you got Bobby John, who was just out next anyway. So there wasn't a great deal of fight left in this team. And I feel like Brandon especially just kind of laid down and died and took it. So, yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. But anyway, moving on to Bobby John. Part of me wants to put him in Survivor GOAT. The other half wants me to put him in Snuff Immediately. I think he is a Survivor GOAT, though. And I think it's one of those things that's really frustrating about a second season, and it's something I feel like Stephanie found as well. It's not the same as your first season. It's not the same people. It's not the same environment. Bobby John found this time significantly harder physically, whereas last time it was harder mentally because they just kept losing. This time, he did better. He improved on his place by 1 point. He managed to make jury, and I feel like part of that was down to his sort of kindred ship with Stephanie and being like, please just let me get to the jury kind of thing. Similar to what happened last season with Stephanie, where they promised to take her a little bit further just to get her a little bit more of that cashola. But I think that Bobby John on this series was more frustrating to watch because I called him out in Palau in like the first 2 episodes and I was like, this guy feels like a toxic man. And I don't know how I feel about that. And then as the season progressed, we got to see more of his vulnerable side because he kept on losing. It was frustrating. And then you started to feel sympathy for him. But on this series, those circumstances were completely different. And so the toxic masculinity that was within him that I noticed in that previous series was starting to show itself again. Especially with his run-ins with Jamie. Now, do I think that that was all Jamie's fault? Absolutely not. But Bobby John has the sort of gravitas of, I have been on a season before and here's what I am doing again. And I feel like he came back and I didn't see a different side to him. I saw an expanded side to him. And he had his moments. He had good moments. And I'm putting him in Survivor GOAT purely because he is an icon of the game. He is the only person to be invited back, apart from Stephanie, for the next season that isn't an all-star season. So I have to give him credit where credit's due. Clearly, those two were popular enough at the time that they warranted being brought onto this series over Wanda and Jonathan. But I have to give him credit where credit's due. He did a good job. He made it merge. He made it to the jury, so I have to give him credit. Jamie, though, gets no credit. I'm sorry. I could not stand this man. I think he was fine in the first couple of episodes, and then there was a moment where he squared up to Bobby John, or Bobby John squared up to him, and they had like their little like fight, and I just wasn't a fan of him from then on. I found him to be incredibly paranoid. I found him to be a little bit of a beg, if I'm being 100% honest. There were so many times where he was going around begging for people's votes that I was just like, you actually don't need to be doing this. You genuinely do not need to be doing this. And the fact that you're doing this is causing people to not want to give you their vote. So I just feel like he utterly mucked that up royally. I just don't think he played a very good game as well. I just didn't like him particularly. Remember, I'm not necessarily ranking these players on how well they played, but how much I liked them, purely because how well they played is indicative of where they placed, if that makes sense. It's different with the traitors because there's so many different circumstances. You've got murders, you've got banishments. There's so many different ways of exiting the game, but when the only way of exiting the game is either leaving yourself or being voted out, it shows how good your game has been. So I feel like Jamie did not have a very good game. He took his exit like a champ, which is great, but I'm going to put him at the bottom. I don't think Blake deserves to be at the bottom of that. I really did not like this guy, and I'm sorry, but I just can't hack it. I just can't hack. When he left, that was the best moment of the series for me. That exit was just gorgeous. Up next, we have Gary. Gary was an icon. Gary is the first, correct me if I'm wrong, celebrity that we've had on Survivor. The first person that has had a professional career in the public eye before this competition and has come in hiding his true identity so that people won't recognize him. Unfortunately, Danny did recognize him, and that started to spread like wildfire among the cast. But I feel like Gary did exceptionally well with his game, with his personality. I genuinely did like him by the end of his time in the show. The fact that he found the immunity idol was amazing. The fact that he used it and shocked everyone was incredible. It just was such a magical time watching him on screen. And he was someone that I didn't think I would enjoy. When I first looked at him, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about you. You've got a very soft tone about you, and you kind of talk around a little bit, and you don't really make eye contact with the camera. But I actually found myself really rooting for him. Maybe because he was a little bit of an underdog towards the end, but purely because I knew that actually he has everything that it takes to win this show. And I'm surprised he hasn't been brought back. Again, there's so many people this series that I'm shocked haven't been brought back. Amy, Brian, Gary, all with great personalities that were such big characters on the series that just haven't had the chance to shine on another series of All-Stars. It's so disappointing. But no, let's bring back Boston Rob for the 6th time. Do you know what I mean? But that's a conversation for another day. I don't hate Boston Rob by any shout, but 6 times is extreme. But if it's Sari, we'll allow her back for a 6th time. We love seeing Sari. We love it. We do love her. We do. Anyway, up next, Judd. Another person I'm shocked hasn't been brought back. Oh, I'm going to put him up in Survivor GOAT. He made this series feel really unpredictable in a very good way. There were moments where I was like, I don't know what Judd's thinking. I don't know where his head is. He could go off the rails at any point, and I'm kind of excited to see where it goes. Again, he fell into the trap of Jamie where he got too paranoid for his own good, ends up getting kicked out. So I feel like he really deserved to be on another season to see whether we could have that journey of, is he going to be as paranoid as he was last time? Is he going to change? Like, what's going on here? I thought he was a fantastic and very compelling character on this series. And when he was voted off, I was genuinely surprised. I genuinely did not see it coming. And to have him taken out in such a way, shocked. Genuinely, utterly shocked. So, you got to give him credit where credit's due. Very entertaining, very, very interesting character. And he made this season so much more interesting just through all of his personality quirks, all of his sort of like, I don't give a fuck kind of attitude. And the way he played the game was really entertaining. So, well done, Judd. But up next is Cindy. I think Cindy's a mediocre person. And I think it's mostly because I'm just really upset with her decision to take the car rather than giving the car to everybody else. We don't know what the butterfly effect of that would have been, if she would have gone on to win the show, if they'd have kept her around for another couple of episodes. Who knows? But the fact that she was 5th place, and if she had given the cars to everybody else, I think they would have found it incredibly tough to vote her off that night. And I think Danny would have been the one going home. So that really irked me, I have to say. I really do think that she mucked herself up so royally there. But I also feel like I didn't really see anything from Cindy until about episode 10, maybe? And then I was like, oh, okay, we're starting to get more conversations out of her. I think the Judd vote, when she was blindsided with that was when I was like, okay, cool. But then that was her last episode. And then we really got to know her in her last episode. But it just wasn't enough. And I feel like she got a bit of a poor edit all the way through, where I just didn't really know who she was until the very end. And that's a bit of a shame. So, unfortunately, Cindy, I can't give you much higher than mediocre, because I didn't actually like you as much as some other people. Lydia, you're going to my iconic spot for this series. Oh my god, I loved this woman. This woman is one of the purest, kindest, nicest souls to have ever been on Survivor so far that I've seen. I just genuinely feel like she had so much joy in her heart that she was here. She was still here. She was competing with Stephanie. She was competing with other people who were proving themselves to be incredible threats. And she just kept on surviving. This woman should have been out in the first episode or the second episode, whenever they were taken to their first vote out. I was surprised that she made it all the way to top 4. But that's because she was a great asset. She was a morale booster for the team. She made sure that everyone was happy at all times and did little quirky things to make them laugh and lift the mood. It's things like that that make you an iconic character and make you memorable. And Lydia, you are definitely my most memorable person from this series. But then we bring ourselves to Wraith. He's definitely a Survivor GOAT. I have to hand him all the credit in the world to be a person who struggled in like the second challenge, you know, the spiderweb one, and he was struggling to pull himself up out of the water, to go from that to winning 4 individual immunity challenges, which is impressive. Let me just put that out there. 4 is impressive. The fact that he did that, sensational. Absolutely sensational. Genuinely, I didn't think it was possible for you to do that. I genuinely didn't. He also had a good tactical mind, but I felt at times he was more led by others than led by himself. And that's, I think, what stopped him from getting to that top 3. He gave up that opportunity to go to top 3 because he'd made that deal with Danny, and that ended up biting him in the arse. So I have to say, bit of a silly move on your mark. But I have to say as well, listen, Wraith, you absolutely smashed the season. You did well. You entertained me. You were funny. And I'm sad that you haven't come back, but equally, you're a big writer in Hollywood now. So I don't think you need to come back. Do you know what I mean? If anything, if you were going to come back, it would be for fun, wouldn't it? It would just be for a little giggle and a laugh. But that brings us to Stephanie. I think Stephanie would go at the top of my Survivor GOAT for this series. She played this game in the most aggressive, dominating, and competitive way she knew how to. It didn't win her the game because she pissed off too many people in the process, but I have to say she absolutely smashed getting to that top 2. Guaranteeing herself that top 2 position was monumental. she just didn't guarantee herself the win. And I think that's where she lets herself down in the social aspect. She wasn't great at jury management. Maybe that's because she didn't have to worry about jury management in the last season. She was just worried about survival. Whereas in this season, she was too worried about survival and getting to that top 2 that she forgot to worry about the jury votes. And that is the most important part. It's a shame, it really is, but at the end of the day, she was a fantastic competitor, she was a fantastic player, she did the best that she knew how to do, and I can't fault her for that. I cannot even for a moment fault her, so gotta give credit where credit's due. And that leads us to Dani. Part of me wants to put Dani in mediocre. Part of me wants to put her in my alliance, and I think I'll leave her in my alliance, purely because, do I think she's a survivor goat? Not really. Not particularly. She didn't really have an edit on this show. The edit of this series was how did Stephanie lose, not why did Dani win. And I feel like that was to the detriment of her. If she hadn't been so secretive with her gameplay and kept it from production and not allowed them to create that narrative for her, I think she would have been much higher. Because there were glimmers of a great game. When she managed to get everybody to vote out Judd, glimmers of a great game. When she just kept surviving every episode, great game. She won that immunity bonus in the auction, and that helped her win that challenge and keep her in another week. Amazing. You have to give the woman credit for all the things that she did well, but then there are things that I'm like, well, the first half of the game, you're practically invisible. I genuinely didn't know who you are. And then you come into the second half of the game and then you win. And I'm like, huh? The edit wasn't editing. So, unfortunately, I feel like Dani is definitely a victim of the edit. And that's why I can't put her much higher. But that is it. That is all of the people ranked. That is all of them done. So, if you guys have enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in a couple of months for the Survivor Panama Exile Island rankings as well. I think we all know who's going to be in the iconic spot because she's my little love. And I will see you guys in the next episode, whenever that may be. But until then, make sure to keep on ranting, and I'll see you guys later. Bye now. See ya.